Welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, the podcast focused on disease prevention and health promotion from the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. I'm Dr. Misha Kogan, Associate Professor of Medicine here at GW and Medical Director of the GW Center for Integrative Medicine. Today's podcast was inspired by recent news from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or short NIST, regarding their development of new hemp reference material designed to help ensure accurate cannabis measurements, or cannabinoid measurements. We're privileged to have two very special guests today, both of whom are leading voices in the academic world of medical cannabis and hemp, and with whom I've had pleasure of working closely over the years. Our first guest is Dr. Leslie Mendoza Temple, MD, ABOIM, who holds the Owen L. Kuhn Chair of Integrative Medicine and serves as the Medical Director of the Integrative Medicine Program at Endeavor Health. She's also a clinical professor of family medicine at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. Dr. Temple is a board-certified family medicine physician providing a care for a wide range of patients, including adults, children, pregnant mothers, and infants. Dr. Mendoza Temple finished a fellowship at Andrew Weil University of Arizona Program for Integrative Medicine, and she has served as a chair of Medical Cannabis Advisory Board for Illinois Department of Public Health, appointed by the governor, and has chaired the policy working group for the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health. Dr. Temple and I have worked together for years on improving medical cannabis education for medical students, residents, and physicians, and she has been long engaged in ensuring the quality of medical cannabis and hemp, and she's going to tell us about some of the work she's been doing. Also joining us today is Dr. Bryon Adinoff, MD, President of Doctors for Drug Policy Reform, a 501c3 nonprofit that leverages the expertise and influence of licensed healthcare professionals and scientists to advocate for changes in drug policy aimed at improving public health, human rights, social justice, and consumer protections. Dr. Adinoff is an addiction psychiatrist, neuroscientist, academician, and advocate. He is a clinical professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, following his retirement as a distinguished professor of alcohol and drug abuse research at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, and his 30-year tenure as a psychiatrist with the Department of Veterans Affairs. He has published over 200 papers and book chapters on the neurobiology and treatment of addiction, and served and still serves as editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Drug and Alcohol Abuse. In his semi-retired status, Dr. Adinoff has shifted his focus to addressing the consequences of drug prohibition, and his dedication to Doctors for Drug Policy Reform mission stems from a desire to replace the devastating effects of the global drug war with science-based, compassionate, and just system that protects both individuals and society. And so with that, welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, Bryon and Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So, today we're going to focus on the quality of medical cannabis and hemp, with this particular emphasis on hemp and this new NIST initiative. But before I get there, I was thinking, Bryon, I don't think that most of our listeners have good familiarity with Doctors for Drug Policy Reform. Can you enlighten us a little bit, sort of a little bit, maybe also a little bit history of organization? And it used to be called Doctors for Cannabis Policy Regulations. So just maybe give us a little oversight first.
Sure. Again, it's good to be here, and thanks for the invitation. So I think the genesis of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, as you mentioned, our name prior to October of last year, came from around 2010. Our founder and president, Dr. David Nathan, when the whole country was moving towards cannabis legalization, still in progress, but it started in 1996 with California legalizing medical cannabis, and so much of the population was moving towards it, but not physicians. We're still slow on the uptake. And David is a private psychiatrist in New Jersey, and he talked to his friends, colleagues, physicians about cannabis, and they'd say, Yeah, it ought to be legal, but you're not. You weren't hearing it from the medical organizations. He wrote in 2010. He wrote a op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, making a case for physicians uh, promoting legalized cannabis, or promoting the legalization of cannabis. And he got a lot of positive feedback. So he started Doctor for Cannabis Regulation, to be the voice for physicians to legalize and regulate cannabis in 2015. And we've got a few hundred members over the years. Became a very vocal voice, the only voice I know of specifically by physicians for the regulation of cannabis. And I took over as president about 2 or 3 years ago. Couldn't do it when I was working for the federal government at the VA, and the University of Texas Southwestern. But in retirement, I can do and say what I want. So I took over as president. And last year, we just decided it was always the broader problem of drug prohibition was always on our radar. And we thought it was time, with the opioid epidemic, with the interest in psychedelics and the broad issues facing uh, drugs, and because of drug prohibition, that it was time for us to broaden our mission to cover all drugs of use, misuse, problematic use, etc.
And just for full disclosure, both Leslie and I are members of the organization, so we are actually experts in helping with some content and just tracking what's happening. So, um, just so that everybody aware, we've been working together quite some time. So, Leslie, you've been heavily involved in the quality measures. I know you've even joined a startup company. I'm not sure where that stands, that was interested in assessing and reporting on the quality measures. So I felt like you'd be probably the best person to talk to from sort of personal engagement, and in particular in the front lines. So what kind of general quality problems, particularly, let's stay concentrated on hemp. I think we should talk about cannabis quality problems as well, but it's a hemp that we're concentrating, because the hemp, as listeners know, is not very well regulated. People can buy them across the state lines, get shipped to your house, and there are all kinds of issues. So what do you know? It's in terms of what's the problem at hand here? Why are we even talking today?
Well, you're a clinician, I'm a clinician. So we get patients that come in and they bring me bottles of stuff that said, I bought this at the gas station or the beauty parlor or the vitamin store. And they say, can I take this? Is this any good? And it will say CBD hemp. It'll have um, all all manners of nice looking marketing and whatnot. And you can't tell by looking at a jar of stuff whether it's actually got the stuff in it. And if it does have what it says on the label, is it really in there? After a while, I got frustrated, kind of just going by, wow, that seems right, or try it and see. And then we would, in my medical practice, we actually have an herbal pharmacy that's, not financially connected with us, but they carry what I think works well. And I was pretty lost on what I want my patients to take. I did want them to use the hemp products. I think there's a good evidence base for it that's building, or at least low harm. Um, but when you say, well, what brand, you can't just say, oh, just get anything that looks good to you. And the frustration built to the point where, after I tried a few brands that I knew were kind of the first in the marketplace, um, I go, were they really that good? Just because they have a nice reputation doesn't mean they're any good. I was The founder of Ashford International reached out to me as a private startup and said, you know what, I think you've got some expertise here. We want to be a consumer labs of CBD hemp products. Talk about a niche, and in a way that promoted not just safety, but don't waste your money on products that don't really have any appreciable amounts of the ingredient you're looking for, being CBD. And given that a jar of salve can go for $40 to $60 for, like, if it's in the palm of your hand, that's not very much. So I also think I don't want my patients wasting money. So we engaged in a way to become a commercial platform. That currently it's an inactive group, so I really haven't, hasn't really gone any further than our planning stages. But what we did is we bought and paid for lab testing of about 35 different products we bought off the shelf. Those that I was already using in my shop, others that we thought that has a reputation, and we had them sent out to SC Labs. They did for $600 or $700 fee. Each provided a very comprehensive list of the CBD, THC, all the minor cannabinoids, including mycotoxins, pesticides, molds, heavy metals, and uh, yes, those are the main ones. Oh, and bacterial contamination. And I thought, wow, this could be a platform for an independent way to figure out which brands are good. We would have no skin in the game in terms of like supporting any one company, but then, if people would purchase the product on the platform, that would help fund the research we wanted to do. So we had to figure out how to, because we weren't getting any money from anywhere else except the startup to start, testing some products and paying the fees. And as much as it was really great, I figured out that the products I was recommending were good. So I felt good about that because clinically I was
That's
seeing.
good.
So it was kind of nice on the back end that, whew, I'm glad that those passed the tests. I don't know if you want to go over those brands during this podcast because I don't want to promote anything. So
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I
I don't
think
want to,
yeah.
yeah, mess that up. But because things can change anyway. Companies can change their
Mhm.
marketing standards. You have to keep testing them because what tested well before, if they fall down on their quality control, they might not be so good 5 years later. So I don't want to share brands because they might have done well on our tests and then maybe they're not so good later. So anyway, that's my long story as to why I got interested in quality control and figuring out a way to know that the products you're taking are any good. Plus, we do this for our vitamins and supplements and herbs. So you and I in integrative medicine have always been interested in
Right.
recommending what are the best fish oils, the
Mhm.
best turmeric for various concerns.
I mean, for me, one of the big things was I don't know when the Delta 8 issues start coming on the radar. I think it's probably 3 or 4 years ago. I remember in the beginning, when before it became sort of everywhere. Even back then, there was a lot of red flags, right? So that there was several studies showing something like 75% brands were contaminated with heavy metals, and so the bottom line here, I think that's where I was going, is when you take a large amount of hemp material and you dramatically concentrate it to get a little bit of an active ingredient, whatever you're trying to get, THC, delta 8, CBD. The problem is though, so you're concentrating whatever the toxins may be in there. In fact, there is some belief that hemp products are potentially a lot more dangerous for toxins because they're so much more concentrated. So you need a much larger bulk than you sort of extracting down. And the data has been all there. I think so this is good that this new um, standard is coming out because the reality is we need to assure that the public is safe. Bryon, what have you been hearing before the NIST came out? What have been attempts in the past to try to somehow oversee the quality measures for hemp specifically? I mean, the cannabis is a different story because every state has their own guidelines and it's just a mess. But the hemp is now federally regulated as a whatever cosmetic products, I guess. And this is the first that I've remembered. Have you seen anything before this one?
Well, I haven't been really enmeshed in the hemp. I really became involved with hemp with respect to the minor cannabinoids that were being sold because that's when, to my mind, it really became an issue in terms of like the Delta 8 and the other intoxicating minor cannabinoids when they were being synthesized from CBD, from hemp, which, unbeknownst to, I think, most people who probably voted on the Farm Bill, that this was a potential problem. And all of a sudden, we started having these intoxicating minor cannabinoids being sold in gas stations. And the same problem that Leslie was talking about is that not only is that probably not a good idea to be having them sold in that kind of environment, but no one really knew what was in them. Did it have minor cannabinoids? Did it have other toxins, pesticides, solvents left over from synthesis? And so it seems like this has been a wider issue, not just for the minor cannabinoids, but for all the other constituents of hemp as well.
Hmm. Right. So let's talk about this new standard. So this NIST, and I'm gonna actually. So the title of the publication that just came out a few weeks ago from the National Institute of Standards and Technology is "New Hemp Reference Materials will help ensure accurate cannabis measurements." And then sort of they're saying that their key points go like this. So the NIST Hemp Plant Reference Material will assist labs in accurately measuring THC, CBD, toxic elements, and other compounds in cannabis products. So they're actually saying it's broader because they say cannabis products. They're not specifically staying just with hemp. Although that's one of my questions. This development will aid forensic labs in correctly determining whether a seized material is hemp, which is legal in all 50 states, or marijuana, which remains a controlled substance under federal law. And it will also help producers and state regulators ensure that cannabis products are safe for use and accurately labeled. We'll make sure that listeners get the link as in descriptions of the podcast. So, what do you guys both think in no particular order? Like, what is this going to do? I mean, do you have any idea how quickly they'll implement this, and what are we going to see here? Are we going to start seeing some of this bad apples disappearing off the market? What will happen?
I think, first of all, it's probably going to make it challenging for the smaller producers to really survive because uh, getting your stuff tested by the lab, unless the government is paying for this. I noticed what is NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology from the U.S. Department of Commerce. So the governmental agency, which is nice because you're not influenced by industry, which as we were trying to do in my startup, I learned that, and probably the reason why it didn't keep flying is we were having trouble finding producers who would, pay the fee to be, get the testing done. This stuff's very expensive to do. So what I don't know are the implications this will have on the small artisan producers who are making quality products, because it's going to leave behind the big ones who can afford to do this kind of standard. But then again, if you're improving the quality and safety, I think that's great. Nitpicking a little bit of what the report that will be in the link, they look for the major cannabinoids, CBD and THC, and some of the minor cannabinoids, heavy metals, and moisture content. But I didn't see pesticides. So when when we were doing our due diligence, we actually, of all the contaminants we found in the 30 plus products we tested, it was pesticides where some of them would fail. There were no heavy metals in any of them. And I don't know if it's just because the nature of growing hemp. I'm not a farmer, a grower, but it's probably not even part of the equation very much. Whereas pesticides are going to be a big part. And I think you'll probably see a lot more products fail. Maybe they intentionally chose not to test those things. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like from my read, they're not going to test anything. They simply going to try to enforce that the companies, the producers provide a third party testing, which is what I think is the sort of, because right now there is not even the standard. Like nobody has to, like if they don't want to test, they don't. Now, of course, you and I recommend products only that are independently tested, and we all the brands that we recommend, they would actually you can either contact the lab or actually see the testing material right on their website, which sort of I think how it should be. So I don't think there will be testing anything themselves. I mean, that as you pointed out, it's expensive. They're going to mandate the testing, and who knows whether they're going to mandate the batch testing or the how is this going to. But I agree. I think there's a scary moment that if they're going to enforce it, what are the small fishes going to do? The good small fish,
I guess scary depends on whose side you're on.
right?
So for consumers, that's great. As a patient, I'm like, great, let's raise the quality. Scary would be for those who might be put out of business and lose their investment. So I guess it just depends on, and I know there are good products that are out there, but I can't prove, well, it may work well, but it could be full of pesticides. You can't really tell when you put it on your skin or ingest it. So I don't know what the regulations. I'm so glad I'm not in industry, because it is a heavily regulated industry, and the more hoops you have them jump through, I get more concerned about like the bootleg operations and people trying to work around it and offer it cheaper with no quality control. And you can't do whack-a-mole and keep putting those operations out of business that crop up because other people are trying to do things the right way.
So you're basically saying there could be worse. They could sparkle a whole bunch of God knows what. Right?
I don't know.
Bryon, sorry.
So I'm struck. So this is a government agency that is saying we're going to have to be testing, and I'm struck with we've had cannabis being sold legally within states for almost 30 years, and we have no similar federal regulations that is doing the same, and really stresses the need to um, deschedule cannabis so that we can put something like that for cannabis, because there's an awful a lot more cannabis being sold than there is hemp, and it's being left out. I think whether this is good or bad depends on your view of government and regulation. We just had a listeria outbreak that's killed several people. And the government's been able to localize the plant where it came from and recall what they sent out. And the same thing we can do for lettuce or tomatoes. So should we be able to do it for hemp or not? And that's really, again, a view for how rigorous we should get with any kind of product. I know when I was in Texas before I moved to Colorado, which has been an interesting life change, say the least. But Texas passed a law that allowed small businesses that made pies, for instance, that they could sell it. You can sell it at least at the church picnic for a fundraiser or to a small group of people. But once it gets a certain size, then you need to follow the regulations. So there is always that tension between small business and big business, and things that big business can afford that small businesses can't. And so do we cut out regulation for one group and not the other?
My concern on top of all of this is that how the wording is here is that they want to make sure that they have a legal way of saying, okay, this hemp product is marijuana. We're going to pursue you guys all under Schedule 1. It's not legal for you to do this. So, because right now I haven't heard any situations where a hemp producer was basically prosecuted and said, look, you're selling non-hemp. I mean, they don't really have an easy way of figuring this out. So it sounds like this is one of the possible attempts to do so. Of course, if you concentrate, a formal legal standard is that hemp is less than 0.3% THC per whatever the volume you're using. So you can theoretically have a lot of THC in there, because 0.3%, if you have super concentrated product, that could give you a few milligrams per dose. Because if you're concentrating down to, say, 300 milligrams of CBD, that could be 1 milligram of THC right there, right? And that would be under the standard for quote unquote hemp. This is partially what I'm guessing in between the lines. This is how I'm reading, that they want to have a way of having a definitive mechanism by which they're going to follow market and try to do something. Because right now it just looks like there's no way for them to weed out anything. Even if, let's say, somehow they're going to pursue this whole Delta 8 debacle and say, you cannot sell Delta 8 at all, if they even say that. How are they going to really figure this out? Which one's selling them and which one's not? Because if you don't put something on a label. So I don't know. My question to you is, Practically speaking, it feels completely overwhelming when, like as Leslie said, when we're in clinical practice and people bring us bottles, we have no capacity to do anything in there. I mean, if we even have a more time with the patient, how are you going to figure it out? You can Google the product, but I mean, you're going to see what you're going to see, and there's no clue whether or not you're not going to take each product that people give you and test it on your own
Right.
accord. It's
Mhm.
just we don't have capacity for that. I mean, we could try to do that with our own brands, we like, and I've done that, but I'm not going to sit there and test every product that patients bring to me. It's completely impractical. So at least it feels like a good attempt, but so, with all of this said, what do you think is going to happen? Actually, like, what are we gonna? What changes are we gonna observe following this? Let's say they do implement this in a few months, which of course will probably take a few years. But let's say they do implement. Any thoughts on what it's going to change?
I think the question of the minor intoxicating cannabinoids that I mentioned earlier, it seems like much of that issue will resolve itself, and that the biggest issue has been we don't know what's really in these products. Um, I think, well, it doesn't address if you do have an intoxicating minor cannabinoid, then what? If you have significant concentrations say, Delta 8, well, then what? Is it, I guess you're still left with the issue of can this be sold as hemp or not?
Well, and also the issue is, can they legally have a right to shut them down? It's not really clear. I mean, it's a standard. It's just a standard. If
Right.
it's not enforced,
But at least we will be in a position that when that's figured out, we'll be able to know one way or the other, do they meet this standard or not?
mhm.
I guess we could think so. On a positive note, I can see how it may help raise consumer confidence, policymaker confidence, if there's someone who's actually testing, because there are there are labs. You're adding some rigor to the testing. I'm just not sure how the execution of all this. I like it in theory. I just have no idea. I have not seen how they're planning to roll this out. I look at the test itself and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I wish they threw in my pesticides. Did not see that on that report. Was there any line item about Delta 8 THC? They only look for Delta 9 THC and THCA. So if you increase the confidence in quality, might that help beget research? I mean, I don't really know. It's so hard to know because the devil is in the details with what is the impact this will have on the industry, having some of the giants in the CBD hemp space be able to keep up with that, and smaller places going away. Like as a consumer, do you care? Yeah, as a business person, you're going to care if that's your business. But one of the challenges I had with the startup was that there were so many CBD hemp products. There were just too many. No one's making money off of CBD hemp anymore. And that's why we are possibly partly why we see this emergence of the synthetic. The stuff I'm more concerned about is I don't want someone taking Delta 8 THC and not know it. I don't want them taking it thinking it's not intoxicating. It can be. I personally tried it thinking it was fine, and I felt just as intoxicated as I was on Delta 9 with a
Hmm.
tincture,
Hmm.
10 drops, and I was really affected. And I just thought, wow, my kid could buy this and wouldn't know.
Well,
Um,
that's the main problem. Like, what spurred my main interest to do all this is because literally, and a lot of people don't know this. Like, a lot of parents don't know this. I mean, I've been contacted by over the last couple of years by at least half a dozen of my friends who saying my kid has been taking something they're clearly high, but they say they didn't never bought any THC, just to find out they were buying Delta 8 at gas station because their friends been doing that. So it's out there and it's in mass, and a lot of the times it's hidden from the plain view. So what you're saying is that this is not particularly necessarily going to help this, although Bryon, you're opinion is that that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to go after this market.
I think so. Um, but clarify for me because I don't remember. Were they going to be looking at the minor intoxicating?
It doesn't say that. It just says that they're going to go after THC and CBD, but they say and other compounds in cannabis products. I mean, they say toxic compounds, or toxic elements, rather. The wording is. I mean, who knows what that actually
Yeah,
truly means?
I guess the devil is in the details.
Exactly, or not just details, but how they're going to implement this detail.
Yeah, yeah. So I would hope that that's something they would be looking at and requiring, but I don't know.
I mean, I've got the sheet in front of me, and I don't see Delta 8 in here, or
Right? It's not listed.
but I don't know how to make Delta 8. I believe isn't that a synthetic? I don't know how you would find that in a hemp product anyway. But I would want that included, as part of our clinical scientific side of things. That if you're going to do this test, they should make sure we're covering what really clinically matters. What I probably need to read up on is how is this group proposing they're going to spread the technology in terms of regulation and not waste people's time, yet help raise the quality standards for everyone. It also is just very informative. People are learning about cannabinoids and going, "Oh wow, I need to look for these things like we used to with when we were first learning about food labels, looking for uh, trans fats." I remember those days. People now are going to be more educated on this.
That's a great segue. So, in the last maybe 5 minutes we have or so, let's talk about this. So let's talk about how we're going to help the consumer to actually get knowledge and understanding what they're getting, right? So you mentioned label, and Bryon mentioned that the founder of Doctors for Cannabis back then, now reform regulation, is Nathan, who's really pushed a very standardized labeling. And I think if you go to different states have some differences in labeling. Hemp's labeling is all over the map. Some label good, some don't even have anything on the label, just says hemp, and they don't even tell you how much CBD is in there. I've seen those products too. So it's all over the place. So Leslie, let's start with you. What would be your advice? How do you look at the label? What do you look at the label? Unfortunately, we don't have a video here to show to people what it looks like. But talk us through the label, the way you educate your patients.
I always look at serving size. So if the serving size is 5 capsules and it says that in a serving size there's 5 milligrams of CBD, that means one capsule has 1 milligram CBD, which is not very much. So it makes it look like it's a lot. Usually you'll see, 25, 50, maybe 100 milligrams of CBD, but you have to look at the number serving size. We do this also with fish oils and herbs. How many are you supposed to take to get a clinical effect? Which is still up in the air too. What's your dose of CBD? We're not even sure what's the best for joint pain. You basically just start with anywhere from, 10 milligrams and you just go up to like maybe even 400 milligrams of CBD. So you have to know how much you're going to take from a dosing perspective. And then the other, I think when I'm looking at a label, I'm really just looking for how much CBD is in there and how many pills should I ask my patient to take, or how many in the gummy. Do they take one gummy? Do they have to just take half? Um, do they have other ingredients in there? Like, oh, they also threw in lavender or melatonin or something like that. Is the patient sensitive to those items? Melatonin is great for those it works for, but others can get nightmares, overly vivid dreams, or feel hungover the next day. So I look at that serving size, milligram CBD, and what else is in there. The rest of it's going to be all right. Do they use high fructose corn syrup or junky stuff I don't want them taking in anyway? Artificial colors, flavors. For the most part, if there's anything bad, um, I don't know. I guess I don't try to find brands that will also have sucralose, aspartame. This is more for just overall health purposes. That's what I look for on. That's what I want on the label. Regarding the other things, I'd love to see the terpenes in there, but even that is hard to interpret if it's got limonene, pinene, they'll have different properties, but many times things are combinations of this. So you don't know when you've got something that's pinene, linalool, myrcene, how is that going to affect my patient in front of me when it's combined like that with the amount of CBD? It's like almost your brain gets twisted up in knots.
Yeah, I mean, it's sophisticated, and I think
Yeah.
expecting that a regular consumer will have any idea what they're looking at, I think it's
I don't even
completely
know.
unrealistic. That's right. Well, I mean, we're
Right.
trying to come up with this system, you and I and Richard and Tubi and a lot of our collaborators trying to come up with a system of what do we have to teach to every doctor in the country, right? Even that's not clear. I mean, how
It's
much of
plant
this?
medicine. That's the thing.
Exactly.
These are components with hundreds of constituents, and if you try and systematize it, this is where drug development comes, and the reductionistic tendencies of Western medicine is, well, let's just do the CBD and isolate it and make a drug out of it and just worry about that. But then that always has some consequences too that we've learned.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the IICPS, the International Intoxicating Cannabinoid Product Symbol. And this was designed by David Nathan in D4DPR. It is the product symbol for cannabinoid products that are intoxicating by definition, and it's now been approved by ASTM, which is a standardization organization worldwide, and 4 states: Montana, New Jersey, Vermont, and South Dakota, for cannabis. But both of you brought up the point about minor intoxicating cannabinoids, that hemp-derived products can be intoxicating. And I think that's probably number one in what people are wondering about when they take these products. Can I get high or not? Whether it's for therapeutic purposes or not, they want to know that. Or can my kid get high? And so by measuring these minor intoxicating cannabinoids, we would know whether to put on the ISCPS so that people know, yes, they don't need to know what all these minor cannabinoids are, but they would just know by the product symbol whether it is or it's not.
Yeah, that's good. So at least looks like there's a movement towards some general broad um, messaging of some sort. Um, Good. Well, thank you guys so much. I mean, this topic is extremely technical, can go far. I think let's just finish by give each one or two sentences to listeners, to consumers, sort of your best advice, what to really worry about, or like what you should be looking for when you're buying hemp products.
I would say, since I'm not going to mention certain brands, there is a website called consumerlab.com, and they have done a really extensive job of looking at picking brands off of the shelf and testing them for CBD content. None of them are going to have THC in it, so there wouldn't be an intoxicating potential there. But they go through price. It's a subscription bit. I'm not affiliated with them, but they will. I think it's like $40 a year. They have an ongoing, changing, updated CBD list of formulas that have passed their tests. So if you want to see if you want to try it, that would be a place to go. It's the only place I know besides Ashford International, which we haven't been able to update in a while, where you could say, okay, I want to try CBD. What brand should I get? Look on their website, and then you can see for yourself.
And I would just reemphasize that this is what the advantage of regulation is, that we know what we're taking. And I think it's overall a good thing, or a great thing. And we should have this for all sorts of things that we use, including drugs.
Well, great. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Leslie and Bryon. This has been the GW Integrative Medicine Podcast, brought to you by the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health. I'm Dr. Misha Kogan. Thanks for listening.
The Office of Integrative Medicine and Health produces the GW Integrative Medicine Podcast with funds from your donations. Your generosity allows us to raise awareness of the benefits of integrating whole person care, including evidence-based complementary therapies, into healthcare broadly. Help us continue to grow the podcast by making a tax-deductible donation on our website smhs.gwu.edu/OIMH. Click the Give Now button on the left. While you're there, sign up for our free monthly newsletter for even more evidence-based content, including free webinars.